welcome everyone. And already in the call queue, we got some folks in the chat room. A magnificent, dynamic show. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring in all of our panelists and get everybody to say hello, and then I'll introduce them, and we'll go from there. So everybody is live. Say hello to Africa's Reascension's audience.
Hey, Jumbo.
Good evening. Good evening. Hello.
Jumbo, we'll hold the same. Peace.
All right.
So to quickly read from the episode show page, today we'll be interviewing 3 graduates from the Real African Spiritual System: Okomfo Kwao Magloire, Okomfo Afua Serwaa, both of the Akan system, and Oba Sekou Olayinka of the Ifa system of the Yoruba tradition. Wanted to make sure to let it be known this is not a show to perform readings or consultation. This is a show to ask all the questions you've always wanted to ask regarding real African spirituality from the insiders. Maybe it's about the initiation process, what they can answer at least. So thanks for being patient with us. 919-264. I'm going to bring you in, and please state your name, where you're calling from, and what your question is.
Greetings, Brother Kamal. We are His Royal Majesty, Gisovi Akbavi the First. We are the first host to a Vodun King here in America. And we want to commend you on the work that you've been doing with the Ascension. Baba Sekou. Boato, assure you what you from Baba. At the son, Nana Serwaa and Kwao, Baba Kwao. Hey, Walterson. Oh, it's not much I can say, but I'm not easily impressed, as I know 2 of the people. I think I met you, Brother Kwao, at the Family Development Conference last year.
Yes, yeah, I remember you,
Danny. And one thing I love about what we call the Maroon Movement or Revolutionary Nationalists is the clarity that they put on our movement. And I will commend you all of you, all the host and all the the people talking. There is no clearer way that this could have been put, and no better people that they could have had on this show than you all. That's all I really wanted to say.
All right, well, that's
Bamio, Adebaiwe, Atisha, Bobo Risha, Bobo Vodu, Bobo Abosom, Ashil.
All right, Labasti, thank you for that. Put you back on mute, thank you. Wow. Okay, that's cool. I think we got another question here in the chat room. There we go. Okay. Excuse me. Kim is basically raising the question that Kwao made sure that I would ask, so let me go ahead and ask it. Why do each one of y'all see real African spirituality as inseparable from re-Africanization, nation building, and African sovereignty when the majority of African spiritual houses, now see, this is my wording of the question, this isn't what Kim said, when the majority of our African spiritual houses are at best open to gender confusion and giving spiritual access to the original spiritual colonizer, and at worst have no cultural consciousness, and some even bring over foreign concepts and attitudes and infuse them into real African spirituality. So why have y'all made the conscious effort to make our spiritual systems inseparable from black nationalism, Pan-Africanism, re-Africanization?
Well, I mean, it wasn't. We move in trends as, even though we try to see ourselves as nationalists in this society, as we're not part of this culture, but we move along. In general, we move along with the trends of this culture. And prior to well, traditionally on the continent, there was no separation between traditional spiritualists and revolutionary nationalists. There was no separation. When we came here, when we were born here, we still didn't have that separation. The majority of the revolutions, the majority of the rebellions that were held were led by priests in Cuba, in Haiti, right? South America, Jamaica, right? In Trinidad, in all the islands, you have major priests major shrine workers who were crucial to revolutions, rebellions, uprisings, anything you call that. And there was a rise of Marxism, Leninism in this country in terms of if you're a socialist, if you're an activist, you had to espouse some kind of Marxist, socialist type, that's when you were known to be he really knows, because he's able to break down the crucial contradictions, right? But that also came with a rejection of traditional systems. In order for us to be successful as revolutionaries, we have to tap into the power of the spirit, the way that our ancestors did it, because our ancestors had it correct, right? The way that we understood it, right? Now, of course, there was something that we had wrong, which we have to fix, right? But there was a power associated with connecting to the spirit that we have to bring back into our revolutionary nationalism. That's the basic reason. So I won't say any more besides that. Well, I'll say more if there needs to be, but that's I can stop there.
I'd like to add something to that. I think that at the end of the day, we can't be who we say that we are. We can't be African people. We can't be Maroons and worshiping at the altar of another people's culture. We Dr. John Henry Clark said it best. He said that, all religion is the deification of a people's history. So if we're going to look back at the best of our African selves, back to ancient Nubia, Kush, later Kemet, and all the other great civilizations, Zimbabwe, and, we go to Ghana and Mali, Songhai, the great Yoruba and Benin nations, all around Africa, Cuba, and all the different African societies, great Angola, and all those kind of places. We have to see that as the deification of us, that was our best African selves, and that we have to return to that, not in a reactionary kind of way, but we have to bring out that kind of genius again to become more than that in the future. It's going to require us becoming liberated and sovereign. It's going to require us to be a new and even greater, a more improved kind of African than we were even in the past when we created the first civilizations on this planet and taught the world how to be human beings. So this is who we are. We are the descendants of those Africans, and that same genius is present in us. But we can't actualize that genius. We can't actualize that ashe, that power, worshiping a European Jesus or an Arab Buddha or any other deity of another culture. Not that those deities aren't real, not that those deities don't exist for the cultures that claim them, but we have our own heroes and heroes. We have our own national ancestors. We have our own Orisha and Voodoo and Loa and Ahosum and Netzeru and so on and so forth, and Kisi and so on down the line. We have our own spirits that have not only charged us, but have animated us and given us life and given us the breath of life and given us the power, to do and to be what it is we're capable of becoming. So we look awful foolish worshiping, Michelangelo's nephew as some kind of deity that is going to somehow or rather lead us out of the challenge that we find ourselves in today as African people around the world. That's not going to happen. We know for us to re-Africanize ourselves, we have to be African. And to be African means that we have to recognize that unique relationship that only African people have with the Creator. We are the direct descendants of the Creator, as is written in the ancient text of ancient Kemet. We are directly in line with the creation of the world. The Creator gave birth ultimately to us, and there's a genesis, if you will, that you go through when you go through some of the ancient Kemetic texts. And again, I won't get into that depth now, but you cannot be African without being an African. The only way to be African is to establish that unique relationship that only African people have with the Creator and with our ancestry that goes back to the beginning of human beings, Homo sapiens sapiens on this planet, and that is us. That's who we are. So anything else would be a bad. Any other deity to worship would be at best a bad copy, and at worst totally wrong and inauthentic of us, the African people. So we can't re-Africanize. We can't develop family. We can't build nations trying to emulate another people. We have to be who the Creator made us to be, and we have to believe in that and empower that and actualize that as our ancestors once did, and we will return to greatness.
Afua?
I agree with what both of the Bibles said. I just think we need to be reminded that before we came to this country or the place that we are now, they were one and the same. The two went together. You could not have a culture or a group of people that did not have spirituality and self-love or nationalism already combined. We have to, because of our current state of existence, have to find a way to reconnect those two. That's the only reason why we're having this conversation. It's because what has happened to us in this reality over the last 400 years has made us have to separate the two. But originally they were not separated, and we need to return that back to that authentic self. In order to truly be strong, we have to also embellish our own culture. So the two go together hand in hand.
So now let me jump in on the other side of this for a minute. In the book Garvey, Lumumba, and Malcolm, Black Nationalist Separatists, there's a quote that says, "Our personal religious conviction, or absence of them, should play no role whatsoever in determining the political orientation of a struggle such as ours, which is purely political, socioeconomic, and racial." Also, probably everybody here, one of our favorite people, Baba Omowale, Malcolm X, one of his famous quotes is, "Keep your religion at home, keep it in the closet. The white man ain't getting you because of who you pray to, he's getting to you because you're black." That seems to be, unfortunately, a common theme and thread through blog talk, through talking with folks, through your typical older type of nationalist. Leave the religious stuff, the spiritual stuff out. Let's just focus on political education, economic uplift, all that sort of stuff. How would y'all counter those responses? I'll start with you, Kwao.
Okay. Mind you, Malcolm used religion to rally people. Don't forget, that's an important idea, right? Nation of Islam was crucial, right? And the power of the Nation of Islam, the way their blackanization of Islam did a lot of good stuff for our people. The Nation of Islam stands, at least pre-Farrakhan, stands as one of the premier nationalist organizations in this country, black nationalist organizations in this country. But when you look at the power of having, which is connected to what Baba Sekou and Afua said, that when you have a different paradigm than your oppressor, then you cannot believe, then you don't believe what your oppressor says. And a prime example of that is the Haitian Revolution. That in the Haitian Revolution, the idea that we had to suffer, this one was pushed to us, right? It's the common Christian notion. You have to suffer in this life, and then when you die, you'll get the kingdom of God, right? And so that justifies all kinds of whack behavior that can take on to somebody, right? Right. So it's good that you're a slave. Yeah, exactly. And then when you die, you'll be all right. While I reap all the benefits of you being a slave, right? But we did not see ourselves as Africans in Haiti. We didn't see ourselves as slaves. We saw ourselves as a people who had the right to avenge for what has happened to our people.
Wait, say that again. A right to avenge.
A right to avenge.
Right to
avenge.
Wow.
The right for vengeance. But not only is it a right that where that right comes from, that right came from our God. Our God told us, you must take up arms and you must avenge what has happened to you. That's a crucial idea in Vodun, right? And in Vodun, there's a story of a priest, a really strong priest, Baba Azala Samdi. He told us a story over 20-something years ago. I was sitting in the class at City College at Brother Smalls, and Ugan Samdi came to the class and he told us a story. You have two people, right? Two best friends, right? They grew up together. Best friends, right? One of them takes a hatchet and chops off the other guy's arm. And the question becomes, the guy whose arm was chopped off, you ask him, well, whose fault was it? Was it your best friend or was it your fault? And Samdi said that in the view of Vodun, it's the person who got his arm chopped off. It's their fault, not the person who did it. That the onus of what happens to you is on you. What happens to you is on you. You bear the onus of what happens to you. That's fundamentally different than Christian theology, which is that God directs everything that happens, right? That why did you do this? God, why did you let that crazy dude shoot 12 people, actually 50 people at the viewing of Batman? Why would you let that? And so a Christian goes and sits down and prays and asks God, why did you do this? Traditional system says, no, you arm yourself and then you stop this from ever happening again. So to me, that's a fundamentally different paradigm.
Okay, I know we got some other responses to that. Lead a religion at home, so this African spirituality stuff ain't even needed. We just need political education. We just need economic education. We just need to do that. Forget talking all this religion and spiritual stuff. Baba Sekou, Mofia, Flip.
At the risk of sounding disrespectful, I have to disagree with both of those quotes. As much as I love and respect both of those great African ancestors and warriors and leaders, in that particular vein, they're both wrong. You cannot separate a person from their value system or from their character. To say, what's the ultimate purpose of spirituality other than to develop character and to help us become more human, become more who we're supposed to be, become more like the Creator that made us. And that's the purpose of tradition, of spirituality, is to spiritualize, to get us out of our animal nature and to get us more in tune with our divine nature, understanding that we're still having a physical or human experience, but we have to recognize that other part of our being, that spiritual part, that and me, the ori, those intangible but ever-present parts of what make us human beings. So you can't separate a human being from their values, and people's values is a reflection of their character, or what we call in Ifa, Iwa. So to say leave your religion at home is impossible. When Malcolm came into a room, he brought Islam with him as he understood it. He was no separate. Now, he may not have made it an issue. He may not have been there preaching Islam and trying to convert people or trying to get everyone to conform to his concept of what Islam was and get everybody to agree to that as a basis for unification and as a basis for organizing and coming together. I agree with their statements in that vein. You don't bring your tradition, whatever it is, into the room in the sense of making that the standard by which organization or unification or coalition can happen. That you do not do. However, when I come into any room, I bring who I am, and I'm a Maroon. I'm an African. I'm a nationalist. I believe in the movement that we've codified as the Sankofa movement, and that's why I bring it to every meeting, every body or organization that I belong to or that I'm invited to become a part of. I can't separate myself from it. So this gives me my perspective. In other words, I can't even have a perspective on politics. I can't have a perspective on education. I can't have a perspective on economics or family or any of the other crucial areas of life if I don't have a foundation. My foundation comes in my spirituality because that's where I draw my values from. That's where my character and what we believe character to be is going to be developed according to some kind of tradition. So it's impossible to do that. That sounds very good and sounds very cliche, but you can't separate a person from their values ultimately. All you can ask them to do is to leave the proselytization at home, which, of course, most African traditions don't get into anyway. Traditional African culture is getting proselytized. We didn't try to convert people or force people to believe what we believe at gunpoint, or knife point, or sword point. We believe that everybody had a right to a relationship with the Creator the way they saw it to be. What we try to deal with people on was their character and a fundamental agreement on principles and values and goals, and that's enough. Some people refer to that as operational unity. I don't put a name on it. I just say that at the end of the day, life is about relationships, and if you can relate with someone, no matter what their religion is, if you can relate to them person to person based on that person's character, based on common principles, common values, common goals, then you have what's necessary to move forward with that person in any kind of coalition or any kind of unification effort. But to separate or to leave my religion at home, that would be asking me to leave my brain at home, leave my heart at home. That's not going to happen, and it can't happen.
Okay. Okay. So I guess, we have a person in the chat who had commented from what you were just saying. Baba Sekou, he said, that is true. Spirituality does not produce the character. The culture of a group does that. Remember, religions come out of a culture just as men created gods to counter the emotion of fear as they seek comfort. Blacks, African Americans can't get over the fear of depending on self. Their comfort is government. Any responses? I know for me, men created gods. Maybe they did so, and y'all are probably more, more versed to say this, but I'm going to say it also. From the African system, we didn't create our gods. We were led to an understanding to tap into nature and understand the spirits that was there, and so they were already in existence. And when we came around on the planet, they decided to make themselves known to us, versus Christianity, which is a hodgepodge of a whole bunch of stuff, shards of Kemet, fragments of Neoplatonism and all that. Islam was just put together hodgepodgely as well. So some of these other systems, I would say, Kamau would say, men created the gods. But within the African system, they were already there. And they opened themselves up to let us know of an awareness of them. And then we continued it that way. Any other comments on that, or are we ready to move on?
I'd like to say something real quick. This is a point of clarity. And I think most of us tonight, not a Kwao and not a Afua, and myself have been, for the most part, consistent in that we haven't really used the term God per se. God is a word of Germanic etymology, if I'm not mistaken, and it's a word that is again of Germanic extraction and therefore European origin. So maybe Europeans did create God for to deal with their fears. Africans didn't create God. Africans are descendants of the Creator. We are descendants of the Most High, Odumankoma, Olodumare, Amen-Ra, if you will. So we don't have that understanding. We are clearly in we're in clear understanding that the Creator begat all life in the known and unknown universe, and anything that ever could possibly come into existence will only come into existence out of the womb of the Creator. This idea that men created gods, to me, and again, I don't want to. This is not a personal attack on anyone, especially your caller. I respect, the caller, but that's a bit arrogant to say that human beings created God, and it sounds very, very, to me, very Eurocentric in the sense that who are we? How do you create a God? You know what I'm saying? We're mortal. We live and die, but we had the power to create a God to assuage our fears, but we don't have the power to empower ourselves to become gods so that we don't have to have any fear at all. That sounds to me contradictory, backwards, and definitely untrue. So I just want to state that for the record. I don't know about God per se. Again, that's something for the Europeans. You can maybe ask the European about that. But as far as the Creator is concerned, I know this much, that there's a hierarchical order, and we know the place of human beings in that order as far as the Creator and of the universe and of the world. We know what the place of that deity or that being is relative to ourselves.
Oh, well, I know, I'm sure Kwao and Afua has something to say, but he followed up. Africans created their gods and legendized them, created legends about them, deified those who we cherished. Africans and every other ethnic group created their deities/gods too. This is again coming from Pianki in the chat room, who just for full disclosure, feels that since the majority of us have been Americanized, we are Americans, and our push for Africanization is futile. Just to give y'all some background. But any other comments you wanted to make on that?
I mean, the idea. I understand from one perspective what he's trying to say. The idea of having a God that you fear, having a God that is, has all these human characteristics. So when you see in tradition and in European systems and other systems, the idea of a God that is human, in terms of having human characteristics, then I kind of see it kind of like deals with some way to explain what we see around us, maybe, right? So in a small way, I see what he's saying. I'm not saying his point is not small, but I'm saying in a small way, I see what he's saying. But the idea is, forget the idea of is there God or not. Forget that idea. Where do I come from? I come from somebody else, right? There is no example that we can point to of, as we know it, that everything else came from something else, right? In the universe, everything is connected, right? Even if you don't want to get all esoteric and, all whatever, right? Planets are connected in gravitational pull, There's forces in the universe that this science cannot even understand, right? Where did this place come from, right? What are we part of? Something so gigantic we can't even comprehend. It's impossible for us as human beings to even come close to comprehend the vastness of what we are in. So how can you then say that we made up this idea of this vastness? That doesn't even make any sense. Now, the idea that someone might try to attach to God to elate or to suspend fears, that's a valid idea, right? That's valid. For you not to be able to handle what you got to handle, you call on God and you pray to God. But as Sekou said, that is not our paradigm. That is not traditional African paradigm. And that's a very important idea of why we have to go back to traditional African paradigms, right? Because, again, you are empowered. In tradition, you are empowered, right? Your ancestors empower you. not necessarily the creator. Your ancestors, those who have passed away, they come and they empower you, right? They give you support, right? Even if they're deified, not deified, doesn't matter. There's those who are not born yet or empower you. That's totally different ideas, totally different paradigm. That's not a paradigm of fear, which is that's a Christian paradigm. So I challenge the brother who put it on the chat thing, to rethink his question, not from a European perspective, not from a European understanding of religion, but to look back into our understanding of spirituality.
Number 4?
I agree with both of the Bibles. You can't even have this conversation if you're coming from a Western or European paradigm. We're not even talking the same thing. And I'm taking this from another brother, another Okomfo. We just had this conversation. You can't even understand what we're talking about if you begin in our conversation and using words and context that come from the European mindset. We're already in two different places, and we cannot begin to have this conversation unless we are willing to let go of what we believe as to be fact, and then try to explore, because if you do any research, the creator, not a god, but the creator has existed and always have long before the missionaries came to the shores of Africa. So before they invaded, we as a people already had an understanding of the supreme creator and that we are not in control of everything that goes on. So if we're coming from the mindset of the European and we created some kind of religion or system or god for fear, I definitely would beg the brother to at least don't even talk about it in that paradigm. Let's have a genuine conversation about the supreme creator or the system and the order of things coming from traditional African spiritual systems, and not even the word religion. That's the other thing, too. We've never used the word religion either, because that's a European concept. So I think we have to definitely start our dialogue with changing our thought patterns and even the words that we use to get a clear understanding and the beginning of really getting to who we are as a people and how we can break the chains and the influence of European values and stuff on our thinking and the way we do things.
Right. Just to follow that up real quick, what now, Afua was saying is so true. And what would help with that ultimately is we ultimately have to get rid of this tongue. We ultimately have to begin to communicate in African tongues, because only really by the same way we're talking about being consistent, you really can't be an African person. You really can't be an African human being. You really cannot be a cultural nationalist if you're worshiping another person's concept of a creator as your own. Well, the same thing is true. You really can't be an African if you cannot express yourself as an African. And the only way to express yourself as an African ultimately will be to read and to write and to speak in an African tongue. And that is part of the problem. We use the terms like religion and spirituality and God and deity and priest and all that kind of stuff. But we're most accurate when, we use terminology like Isheshe, which is really the word for traditionalism, and which more accurately explains what others call spirituality, if you will. But Isheshe is a much deeper concept in the Yoruba language than even what spirituality captures in the English tongue. So ultimately, this is the ultimate goal. We have to get back to speaking our own languages as our day-to-day language, as well as our spiritual language. Because then and only then can we really convey African thoughts. Right now, we're trying to convey African thoughts in another people's tongue, and that's just like trying to be an African worshiping a creator or some kind of deity, if you will, that is not of African origin. So again, we still come up, snake eyes at the end of the day. We're always going to be frustrated no matter how African we get. We have to go all the way back. When we came over here, we spoke African tongues. When we came over here, most of us worshiped African deities. When we came over here, most of us communicated with African ideas of understanding and parables, and some of us even had forms of written language or written expression. We had art forms and all that kind of stuff. So we knew we were thoroughly ensconced in being African. And one of the first things that our oppressors did was to remove the tongue. He didn't allow us to speak because he couldn't understand, he couldn't trust us. So he wanted to remove that tongue. When you remove the tongue, you take all the definition away from people. Now people have to communicate with each other through a foreign tongue and those ideas can be captured, those ideas can be controlled, because the people who control the tongue ultimately control the meaning of the words that you use in their tongue. So this is where we have to go. This is part of our mission. This is why we say we can't separate our spirituality from politics, from education, from everything, because at the end of the day, it's all interconnected, and it's all part of one great whole that we have to get back to if we really want to truly call ourselves African people.
Okay, so now we got 15 minutes left, so I have one more good question, and it partly ties in with one common theme that Bianchi brought up, but it's also a question that I have for you all as well. Excuse me. Before I bring it up, I did just want to say one of our chat people, Goddess Earth, mentioned the fact that religion and spirituality are two completely different things, and y'all pretty much attested to that as well. And then Baba Sekou took it to a whole other level in the sense that religion and spirituality are still other people's terms, and so he even gave us a good term to even replace it with. But I don't know if y'all will be able to do any overtime with the last hour or not, so let me try to get this question in and get y'all to answer it. Bianchi raised a question, or made the statement, Black people's pressing concerns is their inability to command an economic paradigm here in the U.S. If that is beyond reach in the U.S., it's much further abroad. So I want to tweak that question a little bit to tie it into my question. How is real African spirituality relevant with folks on a day-to-day basis? Folks who can't pay their bills, they got relationship problems, whatever, whatnot. How will knowing about and living these principles that y'all been talking about within real African spirituality, how will that help our daily life? So maybe tie in the economic question as well as the daily living within your responses. And Mama Afua, I'll let you start.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think once you accept that you are African and that this is how you are going to live and who you are going to be, then it just becomes a natural part of your entire day. You don't get up and anything does not happen without you understanding that there is a spiritual force and forces out here that we may not be able to explain. I won't say that we can't see because some of us can, but forces and things that we may not always be able to explain. So in traditional Akan systems, to day-to-day, it's just that. You wake up, you give thanks for rising, you move forward with your day. Each action, thought is related around what you believe, how you treat people is related around your character or sabantrani and how you act and interact with other people. Your belief systems that things may be bad now, but they will get better. You can always ask the Creator and or your ancestors to help you in what area of your life that you need help in, financially, with school, with relationships, with all of that. You can seek the guidance of the ancestors and your clan ancestors as well as the deities or the Creator with regard to basic day-to-day functions. Should I do this? Should I relocate? Should we buy this house? So once you come from an African paradigm, it's not necessarily our financial situation here in the U.S., because I know that's bad, but you're also trying to, once again, make our paradigm fit into an alien reality. The financial circumstances in this country are by design. It's not by accident, and it's not necessarily on our behalf. So we have to separate what's going on with this society and how we live as compared to what we do traditionally and how we live each and every day as being a part of our spiritual context of just existence, day-to-day existence.
Baba Kwao?
Can you repeat Bianchi's question again?
He had made the statement that Black people's pressing concern is their inability to command an economic paradigm here in the U.S. If it's beyond reach here in the U.S., then it's much further abroad. And so then I tweaked that and added how is all of what we've been talking about applicable for our daily lives. And so.
Okay. Well, I agree with what Afua just said. I mean, you can't. That's you get guidance. You can get guidance on a daily basis on what needs to occur and so forth for that. Right? What the decisions you're trying to make, and so forth. But I just want to say something. I don't agree with the idea that the brother is saying that's the chief concern about what I want to say about nationalists. Now, you have some nationalists who say that economics is the key idea here, but economics is not an issue here in the U.S. It's inability to organize is our key issue, right? We don't have the ability to organize our people to move the way that we want them to move, right? Even if you go down to a smaller unit, right? Our own organizations, right? We don't have the science of organizing our own organizations, right? We don't have the science of having multi-generational transmission and transition from the elders to the next generation, keeping the same fervor, keeping the same energy, expanding the organizations. We don't have that down pat, right? Forget economics. We don't have an economic issue here, right? I mean, I know people, black, what is it, Emmett Wilson's book, the Blueprint for Black Power, where he laid out this idea of economics being key. Now, economics is important, right? But I don't think we're at a phase in our development as nationalists for economics to be the primary thing that we should be concentrating on right now. The primary thing we need to concentrate on right now is how do we organize our organizations? How do we organize our people? That's key.
Sekou?
Wow. Just reframe one more time the question about relative economics, and you expanded it out to what again, Robert?
How can we use these? How is this real African spirituality relevant to our day-to-day existence? If we can't pay our bills, if we got relationship issues, how will knowing about the Orisha and the Gungun and all that, how will that help on a day-to-day basis? Isn't this all abstract stuff we talk about? Give us some day-to-day stuff.
It could be. I mean, if you're out in the street and you can't pay your bills, you don't have a roof over your head, and elements are having their way with you. When it rains, you get wet. When it's snowing, you get cold and covered in snow. It's kind of hard to go to a person like that. I mean, we're still human beings. We have to, take care of what the European calls, the hierarchy of needs, and Africans have had similar paradigms, going back to ancient Nubia and Kush. You have to take care of physiological needs first, and then you have to take care of those basic food, clothing, shelter, and things like that, and after that, then maybe we can get to some other things like belongingness, and ultimately, at the highest part, is self-actualization. So yeah, can it help? Yes. The confidence that you get from knowing who you are is a great thing. One of the things about the Japanese that they used in coming out of World War II is that they had the confidence that they could do it, and they looked at their history and their past. For example, of when they had to reconstruct Japanese society after the great wars that they had, internal wars they had amongst themselves and the various samurai clans and all. So although this was a more devastating defeat as far as militarily with the dropping of the two bombs, they never forgot who they were. The Japanese refer to themselves throughout their history as the ant people. And the only thing you know about ants, if you come in and knock over an ant mound, or you look back 2, 3, 4 days later, they done built that thing right back up. So the Japanese had that confidence. You have to ask them, where does that confidence come from? It comes from their culture. It comes from, and all the culture is really is a book of problem-solving mechanisms. This is the collective wisdom that any people has or should have access to help them solve their collective problems. What Kwao just alluded to is the fact that our playbook has been taken from us. Our playbook has been edited and really, not occasionally edited. Our playbook has been taken from us, burned and destroyed. In other words, we don't have the knowledge of who we are. We don't know how, like Kwao said, we don't know how to organize our organizations. We don't know, how and what to do with money, what money is, what to do with it, how to get it, and how to make more of it. These things have been lost to us because we don't have knowledge of ourselves ever having done it. So to us, money is a piece of paper. Money is a paper with a dead president on it that has a number on it that has some kind of value. Currency is representative of money, but money and currency are not
they're similar, but they're not synonymous. So I say all that just to say that being a part of an African traditional cultural system, if you really, really, in my opinion, if you really, really go into it and accept it fully, it becomes for you what the Torah is for the Jewish people. It's their playbook. It's what they look to. It's what they go to, and they want answers. It has the answer to whatever may challenge or ail you. It's in that book, and ours is in our culture. Most African traditions, especially West African traditions that most of us are descendants of, those of us who are descendants of so-called slaves here in America, in the Americas, they weren't written, but that knowledge was held. That knowledge was held by so-called griots, but we prefer to use the word Jali or Jegna. These people held in our tradition, in the Ifa tradition, Babalawo, are great repositories of the knowledge of a people. And this is what we have to look to. This is where the great power in tradition comes from. It doesn't come from the rituals necessarily, although the rituals are important. It doesn't come from the drumming and dancing, although those things are important. They're not crucial. The crucial piece is the actualization of the knowledge. The crucial piece is knowing your story, knowing in our particular tradition what Odu applies to you. What are your taboos? What are your erase or your blessings? What are the things that want to empower you? What herbs, what foods, what clothing, what place should you live at? What kind of person should you marry? This is all ensconced in the various 256 Odus of the Odu Ifa sacred text, if you will. And again, I say text, but it really isn't a text. It's an oral tradition. So we have to be knowledgeable. We have to know these things because in this Odu Ifa is the answer to our problems. It's the answer to anything that can befall any human being. It's all been done before. It's all been recorded. It may not happen the exact same way it happened in the past, but when you find out what your Odu is, you begin to read those stories, you begin to understand what happened to this particular person or that particular challenge. You can best believe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 of those stories are going to be directly related to your life in today's terms, but it's going to be similar to what this particular person or this particular animal or whatever it is went through in this particular story. So I say all that just to say that, just to bring it to a close, being in the African traditional cultural system may or may not help a person in their day-to-day life. The last thing I'll say is this. These traditional cultural systems are just that, they're systems. Until we begin to live as a people, until we begin to live as an organized mass of people, we will only get out fractional blessings that we should get. Remember, these systems were called and created when African people were in control of their time, in control of their space, when our family structures were relatively intact. We weren't perfect, but we weren't under the assault they were under today. Today we live in a very, very fragmented state. So a lot of the blessings that come from collective living, that come from being a part of a culture, that come from being unified, are lost to us because power can only exist in relationship to how people relate one to the other. And our relationships are fractured. Hence, our power is fractured, and we can't get the full blessing or the full ire or the full ashe out of any situation because we're not organized for those for that energy to travel its appropriate path so that people can actualize fully the ashe that's inherent in any situation. So we're going to be limited because we're under assault and we're in a foreign place.
Okay, let me jump in here because they just told me we've got 90 seconds left. I can't even talk now. Is anybody able to stay for a third, maybe a little while longer, or do you all have to leave?
I have to leave. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to too.
I'd be willing to come back and do another show if that's okay, but I have to leave right now. I'm
okay. Papa Kwao?
Due to do something.
I can give you 10 more minutes. 10 more minutes.
Okay. Because we do have one more person with a question here. So I need to say, Madasi, thank you so much. I can't wait to listen to this on the archive myself. To you, Baba Sekou, and Mama Afua, thank you so much for what you shared. I hope we get 3,000 downloads for this. Hopefully, yes, it seems like we may need to have another show. We've had the most callers in the call queue and quite a few people in the chat room. So I want to thank y'all so much.
Thank you for having all of us.
You're welcome. Thank you
Really
for having me. Yeah.
Nana Afua and Nana Kwao, good talking to y'all, and hope to see y'all real soon.
Okay,
Yeah,
bye.
we'll see you.